Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Ancient Mathoms series. Uh, Today we're going to be going through our card reviews for the final two packs of the Dwarrowdelf cycle, um, Foundations of Stone and Shadow and Flame. As a reminder to those who are jumping in late in the game, the Ancient Mathoms series is a project where we go through cards from the early game and take some of the old coasters and give them a little bit of shine up and bring them up to be useful in a modern card pool. I'm
Or
your
we
host,
take,
Amundsen.
and I'm Grant Thompson, just along for the ride, or we take highly overpowered cards and nerf them to bring them back into line with the current card pool.
We do that too.
But that's just on a side note.
It couldn't possibly be coming up in this episode at all, right?
Well, that leads us on to our first card of the set. Vilya, the two-cost neutral attachment, which the original says attached to Elrond, he gains a spirit resource icon. Then, as an action, exhaust Elrond and Vilya to reveal the top card of your deck. You can immediately play or put into play the revealed card for no cost, if able. Otherwise, move the revealed card to the bottom of your deck. Overpowered. No two ways about it.
Yes. Um, Almost certainly the most powerful card in the card pool.
In conjunction with Elrond, yes.
In conjunction with Elrond, yes. Um, and there was not an easy way, unlike most of the other nerfs we've done, there wasn't a simple way that we could tone down the power and bring it in to a more reasonable level. So what we've done is changed the action text to read exhaust Elrond and Vilya to reveal the top card of your deck. You may spend one resource from Elrond's resource pool to immediately play or put into play the revealed card for no cost, if able. Otherwise, move the revealed card to the bottom of your deck.
Right, in order to save some text, do you think we should just play the revealed card for no cost? Just remove that entirely because we've already paid one for it.
It's a good question, Grant.
Just looking over that now, and it's just like we don't really need that no cost line considering we've already paid the cost for it. Essentially, by paying one from Elrond.
Well, we'll put maybe cleaning up the wording on a shelf and revisit it at a later time.
Yeah.
The concept, however, is that every time you use Vilya, you have to spend a resource from Elrond's resource pool.
Yes, and it makes an interesting decision on what to play, as we found out in our Shadow and Flame testing.
Yes, we did. That was a fun game.
It was indeed. So next up we have, well, what do we have?
We have We Are Not Idle, a zero-cost leadership event. The original red action exhaust X dwarf characters to add X resources to a hero's resource pool and draw a card.
But that was nerfed due to an errata which said exhaust X dwarf heroes and add a resource to that hero's resource pool and draw a card.
Now, the errata was well needed. If the designers hadn't done it, our project probably would have.
And it would have probably looked something a lot like this. Exhaust X dwarf characters and add X resources to a hero's resource pool, limit 3. And then if you exhausted at least one character as part of this effect, draw a card.
Yep. So basically, we've brought back a little bit of its original use in a dwarf deck. That is, you play an ally, exhaust the ally, get a resource, play another ally with those resources. You're not losing your hero actions to do it.
Yeah.
The limit 3, though, makes it so you can't just get insane numbers of resources from a single play.
And also the fact that Legacy of Durham was also nerfed due to an FAQ, due to an errata, means that you can't dwarf swarm as hard.
Which, in all fairness, is probably not a bad thing.
True. So,
I think one last aspect of this card I did want to bring up is that we also made it so that you didn't draw a card unless you've exhausted at least one character. So you can't just toss 3 copies of We're Not Idle in to thin your deck anymore.
yeah, which is one of the best, which is why I actually kept playing it after the errata. I used it as a pseudo card draw for leadership because leadership didn't have that much in the way of card draw, if any, at that point in time. So it was a card draw benefit. But now, as the card pool has grown, I can understand needing to put restrictions in on that.
Yep.
So next up, we have an elf.
The Trollshaw Scout is a 2-cost tactics ally, Noldor Scout, with 2 attack, 1 defense, and 2 hit points. He's ranged, and he does not exhaust to attack. But there's a forced effect after Trollshaw Scout attacks. Either discard it from play or discard a card from your hand. Grant, have you ever played this card before?
No. Oh, well, I have once or twice when I first started playing, and then I found the fact that his cost was significantly overpriced. You're paying two, and then you're paying an additional card per round to attack with them, and his stats aren't that great. And it was just like, well, why would I do that when I've got heroes that I can pay two for an unexpected courage and have them attack? Or I can just pay that little bit more and get another ally out that can attack for 3 or 6. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Why bother paying that extra cost of the Trollshaw Scout?
Yeah, his stats and cost are in line with, say, the Westfold Outrider, but that discard him from play unless you discard a card from your hand every single time he attacks really makes him. It's almost like he'd be priced fairly without that forced effect.
Without the forced effect, yes. No two ways about it. He'd be quite powerful without that forced effect. He doesn't exhaust to attack.
Yeah.
But with that forced effect, he's overcosted.
Yes. Either
We've
overcosted or understated. So what have we done to fix him?
Well, we've actually increased his attack to 3 and given him 1 willpower, and we've also added the text. Trollshaw Scout does not exhaust to attack and may attack while exhausted. So that means you can send him to the quest and he can still attack.
Still that forced discard effect, but you are now getting a really good deal for your cost. And so the fact that you have to discard cards from your hand is slightly mitigated.
Yes, but if you're running, say, the Trollshaw Scout and the Watcher of Brunin, be careful because you will be out of cards within a matter of a round or two.
That's true. Either that or run Era Store so that you have a bunch of cards and you're going to get rid of them anyways.
True, but then you're not playing cards, you're just discarding them.
Fair enough.
Okay, so moving on, we have the 1-cost tactics event, Heavy Stroke. After a dwarf character deals X damage to an enemy during combat, deal an additional X damage to that enemy limit once per phase. Now, this was great for killing off big enemies. You had a troll, you dealt 6 damage, you needed 9 to kill, you played Heavy Stroke, and he felled the beast. But it was still quite situational because some of the bigger enemies are immune to player card effects.
There's only a very, very few enemies that are big enough where this would be useful and not also immune. I think the Balrog's one of them.
The cave trolls and what have you aren't immune. Obviously, the earlier cycles don't have much immunity in the way of their big boss enemies, but some of the later ones do.
Yes.
So what we're doing to change it?
Well, we've actually made a little bit more significant of a change than we normally do. It now reads, after a dwarf character deals X damage to an enemy during the combat, deal the same amount of damage to a non-unique enemy engaged with you. We've turned it from a card that stacks up a bunch of extra damage on a single enemy, because there's very few single enemies where that's worth it, to a card that lets you spread your damage around to multiple enemies.
Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't see that it doesn't have to be the same enemy you damage if you've got something like sort of a non-unique cave troll in play with you. You could re-damage that cave troll with that effect. It
Absolutely,
just
you can
it,
still play this card for the exact same purpose that you would have played the original.
it's just that you can't do it on, say, Lord Algaron or some of the more uniques like Chieftain Utak. You couldn't do it because of the fact that it's not a you couldn't play it on someone else and then have the extra damage go to Utak because it's not a non-unique enemy.
Yes.
You could actually damage Utak and then play this and kill off a non-unique enemy, but you can't just target them with the bonus effect.
So, how do you feel about this? Are you kind of excited to get it into play? See what we can do with it?
I'm always excited to see if we can actually pull these shenanigans off. And knowing what we've got coming up to deal with, it might just have to find a place in a couple of the decks.
Maybe so. Maybe so.
So
What's
yeah,
up next?
up next is Elbereth Githoniel. And sorry if I've absolutely butchered that. But it's a 4 cost spirit event with Secrecy 4. After an enemy attacks you, put that enemy on the bottom of the encounter deck. If your threat is lower than that enemy's engagement cost, you set your threat equal to the engagement cost of that enemy. I
So,
have got to say, I have never used this card.
I'm kind of in the same situation here.
It was like, well, why would I want to raise my threat to 35 if I'm already at 20, if I'm in secrecy just to stop an attack? Yeah, not going to happen.
Yeah, the idea is interesting, right?
Yes,
Sure, you raise your threat and then you
the idea is when Frodo taunted the Witch King and basically revealed himself to the Witch King. And his words was did more damage to the Witch King than his blade did.
Yeah, I think for me the real deal breaker is that 4 cost, which means that you can only ever play it in secrecy. And then you're going to be out of secrecy the moment you do it, right?
Yeah. Well, unless you're starting at 2 threat, and then up against, say, the Eastbite Goblins,
Okay, that's fair.
in which case you're only technically going up by 3, or some of the earlier encounter sets that have the low engagement enemies like the Wolf Rider or something. But yes, otherwise you're going to be straight out of secrecy.
Right.
And how
Um,
often do you have a threat of lower than 5?
and the moment you're out of secrecy, it costs 4, and you can't afford 4 to play this.
It's not worth 4 to play.
So what have we done for it?
Well, we've changed it to 2 cost with Secrecy 2, so you can still get it for free. And after a non-unique enemy attacks you, put that enemy on the bottom of the encounter deck. If your threat is lower than that enemy's engagement cost, set your threat equal to the engagement cost of that enemy. So we've made it for a non-unique enemy to be placed on the bottom of your deck, and we've reduced the cost of it. Essentially, that's the changes we've made.
Pretty much. Although I think some of those changes may have come in an errata earlier. Because
Uh,
I actually don't remember making the change to non-unique. I think that was errataed and We just have the non-eroded version up here.
I will check at the minute right now, so just give me a second if it had been a raw ad. Okay. Uh, uh, it was in fact, yeah, it was a raw ad in 2015.
All
The,
right.
the, the
The
title
things
should
we
be
learn doing this project.
yes. They not only changed the card text, they also changed the title of the card. The title should read Elbereth Gathoniel, not O Elbereth Gathoniel, and it should read response after a non-unique enemy attacks you.
There we go. That was, if I recall right, one of the most notable typos in the early game was that they got that iconic phrase from um, the chapter "A Knife in a Dark." They got it wrong, but they fixed it. So
Yeah, it only took them what, a year
yeah,
to fix.
that was back when we got FAQs fairly often.
Yeah, because this one came out in FAQ 1.7.
All right, so let's move on to our next card, which might just be another example of our nerfing spree that we've gone on.
Yeah, and it's probably one that we didn't need to do, but we've done because it appeases the community more than it appeases ourselves. It's a two-cost lore attachment, Asfaloth. Attached to a Noldor or Sylvan hero, action exhaust Asfaloth to place one progress token on any location. Two tokens instead if it's attached to Glorfindel.
That is a remarkably powerful card. I remember listening to an interview, and it may have been with your podcast, Card Talk, Grant, where Caleb was on, and he got asked the question, which is the worst player card to design around for location in terms of location control. And he said Asfaloth because you can use it to clear a 4 quest point location in a single turn if you use it during the regular turn and then use it again in the refresh phase.
Yep.
Um, so, no two ways about it, that is a powerful card. We've toned it down slightly, and also actually kind of expanded the use case a little bit, I think.
Um, Maybe just a little bit. We have given it attached to an Noldor or Sylvan hero or to Glorfindel, restricted. If attached character is Glorfindel, Asfaloth loses the restricted keyword. Then, action exhaust Asfaloth to put one progress on a location in play. Then you may discard a card from your hand and put an additional progress on that location. So this means that you could essentially play Asfaloth on Spirit Glorfindel, the ally version.
Exactly.
So what do you think of the changes we've made?
I actually rather like it. When we were taking a look at it and doing our initial designs, we came to the conclusion that 2 progress felt like it was just a little bit too powerful for what it was doing, and 1 progress felt like it was just enough. So we were trying to find something that was kind of like 1.5 progress. And this was a compromise that both of our minds jumped immediately to try to figure that out.
Yeah, like I say, I'm still not 100% sure that Asfaloth needs this because there's a lot of location control, and this one only really benefits you if you have Glorfindel. And how many Glorfindel decks do you see at this moment in time being run constantly?
It's fair.
But from the point of the Ancient Mathoms, we've done it. We are still yet to play test with Asfaloth, so hopefully in the future we'll see that come to light.
Absolutely. It'll be interesting to get this working with some of the Noldor synergy coming up.
Yes.
All right,
The
on
next,
to our next card.
which is the zero cost healing herbs attachment from the Law Sphere. Attached to a Law hero, action. Discard healing herbs and exhaust attached hero to heal all damage on one character. I've got to say, I've seldom used this card.
Yeah,
I
pretty much
don't
the only
like,
time I run this is in when I'm playing Roscobel.
pretty much. I don't like the fact that I have to exhaust a Law hero to heal damage. I prefer having it on. I prefer characters that like healer characters such as the Wardens or the Daughters of the Nimrodale to do the healing rather than having to rely solely upon my heroes doing it.
So that'll lead in perfectly to what we've done to fix it. You've identified the biggest and probably the only problem is that you have to exhaust a hero to heal the damage. And oftentimes you really want your hero actions to do something else. And
Yeah,
so we've just slightly broadened it a little bit. You attach to a lore hero or a healer character. So now it can go on the Daughter or the Warden of Healing or Yoreth or an Imladris caregiver or what have you.
yes, and the action's still the same. You just exhaust the attached character to heal all damage on one character. So it's the same effect, but we've just word it slightly differently to incorporate the healer.
Yep. All right.
Um, that just brings me up an interesting question. If we give the healer trait to, say, Frodo or Aragorn during the course of the Saga campaign and just have them be the healer, would healing herbs still be viable for a way, or would we just not play it because they're a healer? It gives them something to do with their actions if you not use. Well, for example, Frodo, if you don't use him because he's like inches from death.
Fair enough. That would be something interesting to try out. You can give a character the healer trait in the saga, which means you could
Yeah,
give.
Frodo or Aragorn or anybody else the healer trait that you're running with.
Yeah, that would be interesting, wouldn't it?
It would. So next up we have Risk Some Light, the 3 cost, 3 secrecy event from Law. Action, look at the top 3 cards of the encounter deck. You may select one card and move it at the bottom of the encounter deck. Return any unselected cards to the top of the encounter deck in any order.
This is a fine card. It just suffers from early game secrecy syndrome, which is it's a perfectly fine card to run in secrecy, and the moment you get out of it, it's really too expensive for what it does.
Yes. So what we're done to alter it then?
Well, we've dropped the cost to 2 and made it a secrecy 2 card instead. Again, it's free in secrecy, just outside of secrecy. 2 lore resources are a lot easier to come up with than 3, and you're a lot more likely to be willing to run a card that costs 2 to look at the top 3 cards of the deck than spending 3 whole resources, an entire turn's worth of resources to do that.
Agreed. And the fact of the encounter deck manipulation is quite handy as well.
Yes, it is. It is a very powerful effect. Our original instinct was to drop the cost to 1, and the feedback was very consistent. No, at 1 cost, this would be far too powerful an effect for the cost.
Yeah. Because essentially you run this 3 times in 3 turns. You've spent 3 resources and you've looked at 6. You've looked at 9 cards.
And made sure that of those 9, the 3 worst of them aren't going to show up for...
At least a few more rounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those are the 8 cards. Before we wrap this up, though, let's address the elephant in the room, and that would be Hero Glorfindel, the spirit version. Uh, we were originally planning on nerfing Spirit Glorfindel, but as we got into it, it became clear that Spirit Glorfindel may have been overpowered when he was released, but that was more because there just weren't very many good spirit heroes. And so Glorfindel just started showing up everywhere because he was amazingly good. And that these days he's no longer overpowered.
Yeah, he's sitting on the cusp of the balance curve. Does he need nerfing? Not really. If he was slightly more powerful, then yes, he's like teetering on that knife edge.
Absolutely. That's all really I had to say about that. Do you have anything else you wanted to say about any of these cards, Grant?
No, but I can't wait to get some more of these into play. Obviously, during the progression series, we do our best to try and run every card that we alter, and so far I think we've done pretty well on that score. So I think time will tell to see if we get any more of these on the board.
All right, tune in next time to see us take on the Battle of Lake Town. Until then, happy questing.